In England's bloodless, glorious revolution of 1688, ruler James II was overthrown. The transition of rule from Charles II to his younger brother, James II, in February 1685 was marked by a widespread acceptance that seemed impossible in the days of the Popish plot. The Popish plot was a conspiracy created by Titus Oates between the years 1678 and 1681. This created an exclusion crisis. The exclusion crisis was triggered by allegations made by Titus Oates. Titus Oates was a former Jesuit novice of a Popish plot to assassinate Charles II and place his brother James on the throne. Without forestering his Catholic loyalties, James promised that he would undertake nothing against the religion, the Church of England, which is established by law, and most people gave him the benefit of the doubt. At the advanced age of 52, the new king was reassuringly more serious and hard-working than his older brother. James was a Catholic, and in a Protestant country like England, that meant big trouble. This great fear was called popery. Popery was more than just a fear or disliking of Catholics in the Catholic Church. It reflected a widely held belief that Catholics were plotting to overthrow the church and state. Those who disliked England having an openly Catholic monarch took comfort from the thought that James II couldn't live that long, for even the king was comparatively old for 17th century standards. In October 1687, he turned 54, which is the same age that Charles had died, and his immediate heirs, his daughters Mary and Anne, were both staunch Protestants. Mary was married to William of Orange. The Orange in William's title referred to the French town near Avignon that had once belonged to his family. William and Mary were cousins. The marriage was actually encouraged by Charles II. Through this, Charles II hoped to allay concerns that James would establish a Catholic dynasty. Mary and Anne were the daughters of James's first marriage to Anne Hyde. Anne Hyde was the daughter of Charles's second advisor in exile, Edward Hyde. Following Anne's death in 1671, James married an Italian Catholic, Mary. Mary was the daughter of the Duke of Modena, and the couple had worked very hard to produce a Catholic heir. Mary of Modena went through 10 pregnancies in the decade of 1674 to 1684. Out of these 10, she had produced 5 who died in infancy and 5 stillbirths. So by the time James II came to throne, Protestants felt safe that his wife couldn't produce any more children. Queen Mary was making bathe fertility treatment visits, and just before Christmas, those visits had worked. The news that Mary of Modena was pregnant for an 11th time had passed around. In June 1688, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, James, Prince of Wales. His arrival displaced his Protestant sisters from the succession of the throne. The little prince would be Catholic just like his parents, and he was next in line for the throne. This wasn't acceptable for English leaders, and they decided to take their discussions into action. After only 3 years on the throne, James started causing suspicion. He promised not to undermine the established church, but evidence was saying that his true purpose was to steer England back towards Rome. By March 1688, a succession of moves that favored Catholics had drove out more than 1,200 members of the Church of England from public office. James was becoming very unpopular and very quickly. He increased the power of the regular army, and the Parliament saw this as a threat and placed Catholics in important military positions. On June 30th, less than 3 weeks after the birth of James, 7 senior peers sent a secret invitation to Mary's husband, William of Orange. He spent that summer preparing an army and an invasion fleet. He did not intend to take the crown. His expedition was, in his words, intended for no other design but to have a free and lawful parliament assembled as soon as possible and to inquire, among other matters, into the birth of the pretended Prince of Wales. But many knew he had his eyes on the throne. Shedding English blood would have ruined William's claim to be acting in English interests and would have also exposed his main reason for invading England. The main reason was that he wanted England's military might on Holland's side on its ongoing battle against Louis XIV. William decided to confront James, and James lost his nerve. The king made haste to join his army on Salisbury Plain, only to return very angry to London. He discovered that his daughter Anne had deserted and joined the cause of her sister and brother-in-law. Having sent the Queen and the Prince of Wales ahead of him, James fled Whitehall on December 2nd by a secret passage, throwing the Great Seal of England into the Thames. This was in March 1689, and it created the Battle of Boyne. In the Battle of Boyne, James had landed in Ireland with French troops supplied by William of Orange's sworn enemy, Louis XIV. James planned to use Ireland as a base from which to invade England and recover his throne. In response, William raised a huge invasion force, the largest Ireland had ever seen. In July 1690, he decisively defeated James at the Battle of Boyne. James fled once again to France. The victory is still commemorated every year in Northern Ireland on July 12th by the Orange Order, named for William of Orange. At James's second flee, he was captured by fishermen. This capture was an inconvenience for William, who was now looked upon as the only individual capable to restore order to England. And with the prince's convenience, James once again fled. William let James flee so that they could believe that James had abdicated his throne. And 6 weeks later, in January of 1689, William called a convention parliament to make a new order in England. Convention members began their new session by arguing about whether or not James had actually abdicated his throne by fleeing to France. William soon became fed up and threatened to return to the Netherlands if the convention didn't make up their mind. That got things moving, and on February of 1689, the convention officially declared that James had abdicated his throne and offered joint sovereignty to William and Mary. William and Mary accepted the English crown in return for their agreement to the passing by Parliament of a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was a mutually convenient deal that has gone down in history as a glorious revolution. In other words, the king and queen were no longer absolute in their power. They were now constitutional monarchs who were dependent upon Parliament and forced to work in conjunction with the governing body. Parliament, in turn, was now permanent and powerful. This basically means that the years 1688 and 1689 marked the beginning of England's constitutional monarchy, the moment when Parliament finally codified the control over the crown that had won previously in the Civil War. Really, the Bill of Rights placed a few actual restrictions on the crown. It wasn't until 1694 that the call for regular parliaments was backed up by the Triennial Act. The Triennial Act limited the duration of every parliament to 3 years unless sooner dissolved. Pressure from William also ensured that the passage in May 1689 of the Toleration Act, granting many Protestant groups, but not Catholics, freedom of worship. Parliament gained powers over taxation, over the royal succession, over appointments, and over the right of the crown to wage war independently. William's wars changed the British state. Their massive costs led not only to the growth of modern financial institutions, which was mainly the Bank of England, but also to greater scrutiny of crown expenditure. The Revolution's legacy might be seen as negative in other ways. In Ireland and Scotland, the Revolution was military contested and its settlements extremely politically and religiously divisive. For example, Irish Protestants disregarded the generous peace terms of the Treaty of Limerick and established a monopoly over land ownership and political power. William was now not only William III of England, but also William III of Ireland and William II of Scotland. The Glorious Revolution was greeted as a joy to England, therefore America saw it as an example. New England colonies began to re-establish governments. Jacob Leisler led the insurrection against local colonial officials from 1689 to 1691 in colonial New York, a Protestant rebellion against the Catholic-dominated government in Maryland in 1689. The colonies reverted to their previous forms of government, and new charters were eventually issued by King William III and Queen Mary II. The Glorious Revolution was a precursor to the American Revolution.